Welcome to BladeBound Saga.
Welcome to Duality, a Daggerheart community podcast where we bring together creators, influencers, and storytellers within the Daggerheart space. This series is all about exploring the heart of the game by connecting it with the people who bring it to life. My name is Daniel, your host, and this show is proudly brought to you by BladeBound Saga. In each episode of Duality, we invite a special guest to create a Daggerheart character based on their real-life self. Together, we'll explore their choices, traits, and experiences, building a character that represents their own journey. However, what makes Daggerheart stand out is that our guests will also face an encounter at the end where they'll use the character that they just made to battle an adversary. Along the way, we'll roll Duality Dice to answer the questions of the stories of triumph and struggles through what we know in Daggerheart as hope and fear. So please join me in welcoming today's guest, Rowan Collins.
Hope, fear. You roll the dice. Duality.
Jim, welcome to Duality. Thank you for joining the show. I just wanted to kind of learn a little bit more about Wizards and Wordslingers, as we've seen a lot of growth in terms of Daggerheart in the past couple months, and I think your content has been kind of popping up, and every time I see it, I get really excited to watch whatever's going on. So for those at home who may not know who you are, who are you?
Hey, my name is Jim, Jim Heskett. I'm also known as GM Jim. When I run the WizardSling channel, it's at WizardSling on YouTube, Wizards and Wordslingers. There's a reason why it has that long, way too long name, but we can get into. My channel originally started out as something completely different. And yeah, I've been making Daggerheart content for a couple months now since it came out. I made a few videos during the playtest because I ran it during the playtest, but now the full game is out and I've been running it for some friends of mine and going to start running at the local game store. And I love Daggerheart. It was just the right game at the right time when I was ready for something new compared to the games I had been playing.
Yeah, and I think resonating with a lot of other people who are watching our content, they're probably doing so because they just want to know more about this game that has kind of taken the TTRPG world by, I wouldn't say an unpredictable storm, considering that it's a Critical Role umbrella IP, but it has blown up way more than I was actually expecting. Because I thought it was going to be big,
now.
just not nearly as big as it was. Being sold out for, I think, like 2 months straight before they finally got stable enough supply for the demand. All right. But just like everyone else on the channel, they've made a character. You've made a character to represent yourself. But before we jump into the character sheet, we always start by just rolling Duality Dice. So go ahead and give me a Duality roll to see what kind of random question you get on our Duality question sheet.
Oh man. Okay, so I'm got my 2 dice here. I've got blue for hope and purple for fear.
Perfect.
That is what did I say, blue for hope? That is a 19 with hope.
19 with hope. Okay. Go ahead and add that hope to your character sheet, as at the end, that'll be something that you'll use when we get to the encounter. So your question for this is, what is a positive memory that you have of a gaming group or a gaming session that really kind of sticks out in your mind?
Positive memory.
Yeah.
Well, I was just talking about this on a different podcast the other day. I'll tell you about one of my earliest gaming memories. I learned how to play Dungeons and Dragons at my older brother's knee when I was like 10 and he was 15 or 16, and he ran D&D for me for a while, mostly just him and me, but not one-on-one like you would do in modern D&D. It was him and me with 4 character sheets in front of me.
Sure.
10, 11-year-old me going, It was full panic, but I loved it. But then a few years later, my brother was the only person who would run games for me. And then I started running my own games where I was just making up games. You know, I would just make up stuff on the fly. But then the real game master, somebody not my brother, ran for me. It was my friend Iggy. And I remember that first time he ran for us, we were playing Rifts. And, we were this like cartel of drug dealers. We were all a bunch of rowdy bad kids. So we played drug dealers in our Rift game. And we got to a point where we had to get to the top of this cliff. Iggy said, okay, so how do you get to the top of the cliff? And my friend Danny said, well, I've got a jetpack. So he zoomed up there, and then Iggy said, all right, now how are the rest of you going to get up there? And that was like, because my brother hand waved all the problem solving stuff. It was mostly combat. But Iggy, he didn't care about hit points and damage. All that was boring to him. He liked the problem solving. So being able to see how a different game master could bring a completely different experience to a similar kind of game, mind blowing. It made me fall in love with TTRPGs forever.
Yeah, I think as you branch out and as you like learn how to play, I think by far my favorite players that I end up having at my tables are the ones that I ask, "What are you doing?" And then the answer that comes out of their mouth is not at all what I was expecting them to say, and it completely reworks and shapes like a completely different storyline and causes all the players to kind of get a little jumpy. It's like, "Oh, I can do that." Oh, and I think when you kind of shift away from it's not currently on your sheet and like those kind of questions or those kind of like actions when they're like doing something, I'm just like, can I try to do something? And it doesn't. There's no mechanic on their sheet that says they can, and the kind of that player discovery, I think, really reshapes like just the flexibility of TTRPGs.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So jumping into your character sheet, everyone starts with a community, a heritage, and our community and ancestry, and a class and subclass. You picked Wanderborn. Can you speak to me as to like why Wanderborn is like that founding community for you?
Well, you told me to make a Daggerheart PC based on myself.
Yeah.
Which was a struggle because I was thinking Bard. Bard was my first inclination because I've done a lot of acting and I'm an author, and so I also make music. I compose music, so I'm in the creative arts a lot, but I just don't have that kind of extroverted bard thing, really. So one real thing I really love about Daggerheart is the way it is the wheel, the domain wheel, because Rogue is right next to Bard.
Mm-hmm.
So I've picked Rogue so I could still have some of that. What's the domain? Not Codex. What's the other? Grace?
Grace, yeah.
Right? Yeah. But then I picked Wanderborn because I've done a lot of traveling in my life. I've been all over. And so that just felt very true to me.
Yeah, and I think speaking of like the nomadic pack that the Wanderborn gets, I think a lot of the times, like for those who are well versed in travel, you do get to like you do pick aspects of like where you've been, and it does affect like who you are, sometimes even in the most minute ways. Like I still remember I used to live in Atlanta, and so I still have some of that Georgia culture in me, even though I am no longer in Atlanta anymore. So I think that makes total sense with someone who has been well traveled. You then spoke about Rogue. Why? I know we kind of talked a little bit about like it's not necessarily extrovert, but why then Rogue instead of just going like or leaning more into the musical side of Bard?
Well, I like the performative parts of the Grace domain, but I feel like the Midnight domain is just kind of more honest to who I am.
Yeah.
I was a really rowdy kid and I got in trouble a lot. So I think for a big part of my life, I was very roguish until, about my mid-20s when I figured myself out and cleaned up and, like went back to college and stuff. So I feel like it's just, wow, really exposing myself here. Yeah, it's just, yeah, that's what I am. I think probably roguish. I'm not a guardian. I'm not a seraph. I'm not
Sure.
a warrior. I'm not really a druid, although I do love being outdoors. Maybe ranger. I'm real outdoorsy, so maybe ranger, but rogue just kind of feels. I might multi-class ranger later.
Yeah. And then you also picked Nightwalker as your subclass rather than Syndicate. Is there a specific
Yeah.
reason why Nightwalker spoke more to you?
Well, it's more that Syndicate didn't speak to me.
Sure.
It's because I am not that guy who knows someone everywhere. I'm not that guy who knows a million people. I'm just not extroverted like that. I'm more that kind of guy, like it's hard to get to know me, but people say it's worthwhile once they do. So just the shadow stepping felt more true to the roguish nature of me being introverted, keeping to the shadows. I love spending time alone. That feels very roguish.
Yeah, totally. And then kind of jumping into the last portion of the very first part that we create in Daggerheart, human as ancestry. Others have kind of reflavored different aspects of other subclasses, but is there a specific reason why kind of that high stamina and that adaptability from human kind of spoke to you in terms of your ancestry?
I just feel like a very normal person. Human is probably the perfectly average in every way.
Yeah.
That's kind of my vibe.
Yeah. No, I mean that makes sense. I think for me, I typically am a player that also like leans into humans because I feel like when you're walking into a world of fungus people and demon people and turtle people, really your sense of wonderment is only expanded when you are what we would consider like as base normal.
Well, and this is funny because this isn't what I would actually play.
Sure.
When I play in 5e, like my preference is the more fantastical species. Really, for me, it's if I look at a species, how many puns and jokes am I thinking of? Like in a recent campaign, I played a Herongon for several months.
Yeah.
I switched up my main character and picked a Herongon, and his whole thing was praying to the dirt god, the orange one. And I had all these jokes about, Herongon's a bunny person. I had these jokes about how he had 143 brothers, 176 sisters. If there's built-in comedy into the species, I love it. Like, I also in that same campaign played an owlin for a long time, and so it was all owl jokes. So I'm mostly there for the lulls, but
Yeah, I love that. All right, so before we jump into your traits and what you picked there, go ahead and roll me another duality roll and see what kind of question you get this time.
goodness. All right, that is oh, that's a 12. I was like, what is a dragon? That would be that's an 18 with hope.
18 with hope. Okay, so go ahead and add that hope. To hope, me not looking too hot for when we get to the encounter section. But with an 18 with hope, the question then comes down to what is your most favorite TTRPG setting that you've ever played in?
Can I say my own?
Sure, yeah. You want to let us know what that is, though?
I mean, I like the Forgotten Realms. I know people crap on it because it was the default setting for so long. And I like the Forgotten Realms, especially the Sword Coast, because it has everything. Everything is within a couple days airship ride of everything else in the Forgotten Realms in the Sword Coast, and they have all kinds of stuff there. But I've been developing my own homebrew world for actual plays and stuff for the last few years, and I've featured it in a few actual plays. It's a world called Tiradon, and it's how do I describe it? It's my logline pitch for it is that it's a world beset by amnesia, littered with the corpses of ancient titans, and surrounded by a poisoned sea. So it's kind of a very low fantasy, grim, dark, kind of quasi-environmentalist story about the oceans being poisoned, and it's a very fun world.
Yeah. No, I can only imagine, like, as someone who's a massive, like, Castlevania fan, Dark Souls, like, all that, like, Grimdark is one that heavily speaks to me. And I'm personally still in the process of playtesting and creating my Grimdark campaign frame, which is more vampiric theme, but also, like I love the idea of the players not knowing, and it's that sense of I can only assume based on the pitch that it's a lot of trying to figure out what exactly is going on with the world and fighting against basically everything because everything wants to kill you.
Yeah, I'm sort of developing a kind of Rod of 7 parts style mega campaign to save the world.
That's awesome. All right. So, jumping into traits, you have your highest trait as finesse. What's the reason behind that?
Well, I just feel like I'm much more of a social rogue, not as much into the damage. Much control, hide, and tinker feels like the kind of things that he would do in a party, like the kind of person who is going to sneak into the barracks armory and steal stuff while the rest of the party is fighting.
Yeah,
that's more his vibe, I think.
Yeah, and then which kind of then makes sense, I guess, for the strength being a -1.
Yeah, that's pretty true in real life.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think after I started having kids, like it's probably should get back on it, but less and less strength as I have less and less time to go to the gym.
That's also how it works. At my age, I work out harder than I ever did before, and I'm only getting fatter. That's just how it.
And I think the hardest part is food also tastes tastes more and more, or food is just so great in general, but sometimes it wants to kill you.
What are you going to do?
Slowly and slowly. Any of these, you do have another, like, there's another standout trait of the agility being a +2. You want to speak to that a little bit as well?
That's just gaming mechanics because I know that all reaction rolls are going to be agility rolls.
Sure. Totally fine. All right. And then any of the other traits like instinct, presence, knowledge, kind of relating to you as to like why those are kind of more averaged out.
Well, I wasn't paying all that much attention to it until I got to level 5 and I realized I should probably bump up my knowledge a little bit because that is one thing that real life me does have is that I've been around a long time. I'm an old, so I have a lot of experience. So I do know a lot of things.
Yeah, and I think that comes with age, but also with the nature of dungeon mastering. You learn a lot of things that you did not think you would ever learn. Plate tectonics is one of those things that I somehow delved into really heavy for no reason at all other than I GM.
Also, one thing you might be forced to learn as a GM is interpersonal skills. You know, the first time you have to realize that you have to talk to a problem player, you know, that's a big moment in your maturity. The first time you realize I've got to actually pull that dude aside and talk to him because he's ruining the fun for everyone.
Yeah.
Boy, does that suck, but
it's never a fun conversation, but it does have to be done. And it is one of the things that even amongst friends, like you are as the GM, the person who has the teacher seat and has to kind of take the helm over the table if no one else does.
Unfortunately, that's not something that's happened very often to me.
Yeah. That's awesome. Cool.
I'm very grateful about that.
Yeah. So we're about to jump into my favorite section, which is experiences, because I think this is one of my favorite, most flavorful things about Daggerheart. But I do need you to roll duality for me one more time before we get there.
All right, you're finally gonna get a fear. That is an 8 with fear.
8 with fear. Kind of jumping into more of a real life question here. 8 with fear brings you, what is a skill or hobby that you wished you had acquired at this point in your life, or just one that you may have struggled with that you could never just master?
I've had many hobbies. I've never been any good at drawing. That's one of the creative things I've never been able to do for some reason. I'm super envious of people who can draw well, draw and paint, sculpt, and that kind of stuff. That's one creative art I've never done. I don't know, man. I've tried all the hobbies. Like, you name it, I've been into it. I live in Colorado, and I went through my like real serious hardcore Colorado phase, where I was skiing and snowshoeing every weekend. It'd be like ski Saturday, snowshoe Sunday for 6 months of the year. And then it was hiking, mountain biking, backpacking. The one thing I never got into was ice climbing. And I almost did. I was at the store and I was going to buy a bunch of ice climbing stuff. And my friend Dan came in and he was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I told him, and he said, "You know what? I used to think I liked ice climbing, and I did it a whole bunch. And then one time I was halfway up a giant slab, 200 feet off the ground. I was like, you know what? I'm actually not enjoying this." And I was like, I actually don't know if I would enjoy it or not. Maybe I shouldn't spend like $1,000 without knowing if I would enjoy this hobby or not. Yeah. So ice climbing.
I don't think I have the cojones to do that as well. Like, as someone who, I've gone up on lifts and put up speakers on poles as an AV technician, and so heights aren't the biggest deal, but I feel that 200 feet rappelled on ice doesn't sound like a hobby I would get into either.
Scary.
So, all right, experiences. I want to tackle the ones that have the lowest mechanical buff. So your +2s first. Travel guide. Okay. We talked a little bit about this with Wanderborn. And why specifically travel guide?
Well, because I am so traveled, and because I know a lot of stuff, I know a lot about places I've been to. I think I'm a pretty good travel guide. If you came to Denver, I could show you a good time in Denver. Like, I'm pretty skilled at telling people what's good and what's bad about an area or an experience. But people don't ask for my opinion as much as I think they should.
Sure. I am the same way. Like, for some people who may know me, like, I'm a big Yelper. So I will constantly like look on Yelp for everything. But one thing I love more than Yelp is just asking people who live there, because they know where to go when that's not the actual tourist destination. I hate going to like tourist destinations that are just overfilled, over capacity, and I just don't end up enjoying it because it's just way too crowded. So I definitely am on someone who looks for a travel guide when I go places.
Yeah, what I like to do is when I roll into a town, if I'm going to do some sightseeing there, just go to a restaurant and just ask your server.
Yeah.
You know, just if as long as your server looks like a local, just be like, "Hey, what do you like to do for fun around here? You know, what's there that only the locals know about?"
Yeah,
Sometimes they tell you, sometimes they don't.
I do the same thing with gas station clerks. Like if I'm getting
There
gas
you go.
somewhere, I'll walk straight in and it's like, oh, where's a good place to eat somewhere near? And then oftentimes it's pretty good. I will say there are misses with gas station clerks though. There are definitely misses.
Taste is subjective.
So your other +2 is it was like that when I got here. I'm not really sure what this is referring to, but can you go into a little bit detail of that?
So this is basically the idea that if I'm a rogue, this is an experience I would use if I'm caught. So I'd imagine that doing roguish things, sometimes you get caught, and sometimes you need to talk your way out of situations. So that is my talk my way out of when that's my last resort situation.
Yeah, that makes total sense, as that happens fairly often where the dice just say, no, you don't get to succeed anymore, and now you hear jingling at the door. Grammarian. I don't think I knew this word until the magical item, which has been referred to on this podcast before because a lot of people love that item. I'm curious, Grammarian, is this referring back to a ring of Grammarian or is this something else?
No,
Okay.
that is just referring to me.
Sure.
I am my main day job is I'm a thriller novelist.
Okay.
I've written about 30 books. I'm not really sure because I've co-authored books and I've written things for other people. I've ghostwritten and I've contributed anthologies and I've got novellas and short stories. So I couldn't even tell you how many books I have, but it's upwards. It's more than 24. And I am really a nerd about the English language. I silently scream when people use like amount and number incorrectly or few and less. People get those wrong. I don't, I'm not a jerk like I was when I was 17 and I corrected people's speech, but silently I judge people whenever they use the wrong grammar.
I feel like I'd be judged a lot not because I use the wrong grammar, but if you're texting me, I am like the worst about proofreading my texts. Even though I know what I mean to say, my fingers move way faster than like my mind wants to go, or sometimes my mind moves faster than my fingers want to go.
No, I'm not gonna freak out on you, Daniel, if you do Y-O-U-R when you meant Y-O-U''re. It's mostly I just when people try to when people are being jerks online, internet trolls. When internet trolls are trying to explain to you how dumb you are and they're using incorrect grammar to do so, it just really grinds my gears.
Yeah. And I mean, the English language as a whole is very messy sometimes. We are the amalgamation of every language before our time. So,
I didn't even realize how bad it was until I had a kid and I'm, partially teaching him how to read, write, and speak English. And it's the worst language in the world. It's terrible.
Yeah.
You're like, why does this work this way? And I'm like, I have no idea, kid.
Yeah, the H with like the CH and the TH. Oh my goodness, that took forever for my 4-year-old to like recognize that it's not tuh, it's th. Why? Because I don't know. Like that's what we decided. And then your last experience is street smarts. I feel like this is fairly self-explanatory, but where did you acquire these street smarts?
Well, I've traveled a lot, and like I said, I was kind of a ruffian and a vagabond growing up. So I did, learn on the mean streets of Tulsa, Oklahoma, which sounds like I'm being ironic, but yeah, I was a little ruffian. I had to, it's not like I was a Dickensian kid begging for soup, but I've had to grow up on the streets and learn. You feel like as a rogue, you learn how to deal with other people. One of the most important qualities you could have is learning very, very quickly who to trust and who not to trust. So I feel like that's the essence of street smarts to me, is knowing where to place your loyalty in an instant.
Yeah. Which I mean, it is exactly what that is. I think a lot of the times you can't teach that. You can, like, there are like subtle things that you can show somebody, but there is a level of like, it's just an intuition that is a different type of knowledge outside of, you don't read a book to learn street smarts.
Right. It's the kind of thing that you learn through trial and error and pain.
Yeah. A lot of pain sometimes.
You don't learn to figure out who's going to betray you until you've been betrayed a few times. Yeah. That's the wound. The wound that, pain is the best motivator and the best teacher in the world. If everything's going great, you have no impetus to learn anything, right?
Yeah. So that makes total sense. I love every single one of those experiences. So
thank you.
Domain effects is our speed round where we kind of just go through everything, but this is going to be another duality roll before we get there.
All right, let's see. That is a purple is fear, so that is a 16 with fear.
16 with fear brings us to the question, what is a plot line or session that did not work as planned at all? As a GM, I have many of these, but I'm curious what comes to your mind.
So this is interesting. I have a little sporadic, non-regular actual play thing with some other YouTubers called the One Page One Shot Club. We're the OPOSC. And we do exactly that. We do one-shots that are all one-page RPGs. Like we've done Lasers and Feelings, and we've done Sexy Battle Wizards. We're big fans of Grant Howitt's work. There was one that I ran that was called Elf with a 10-page backstory. This one, my players, they're all YouTubers, and they're all game masters, and they're all fantastic, right? They make incredible characters. And so the point of Elf with a 10-page backstory is to make the most edgelordy character in the world. Whereas something like, and then your backstory is like a currency and an ammunition in the game. It's very, very weird. But I basically ran Lost Mine to Fandelver as a one-shot with all of these edgelord characters. But the thing is, the game says that every player is supposed to write an extensive backstory, and the GM is not allowed to read any of them.
Okay.
Is the thing. And that ended up tripping me up a lot. Because as we were playing, the characters kept spitting out pieces of their backstory. And I'm like furiously taking notes. And as I'm taking notes, I'm like, wait, am I even supposed to be taking notes? Am I supposed to write this down? And I didn't know. But my GM instincts are, when you give me exposition, I'm going to try to work it back into the story, right? You tell me that your brother was murdered by a goblin. I'm going to try to put that goblin in the session later, right? If it's a one shot, in a campaign, you don't have to put the goblin in that session one. But so that was really, the session ended up being fine. You could watch it. It's on YouTube. It ended up being fine, but it was like I was out of my comfort zone from minute one until we wrapped. I'm still not 100% sure what the lesson I'm supposed to take from that is, other than I'm not going to run that one shot again. Other than maybe I need to be more thinking on my feet. I'm not sure. I'm still kind of processing. It was like a year ago. I'm still sort of processing the lessons from that.
Yeah.
It was uncomfortable. I didn't like it.
No, I'm right there with you. I feel like that's a very, very interesting, like, writing a story for me as the GM not to know. And, I don't need to know every single aspect of someone's backstory, but I do feel like if the players are writing a lot, I'm the same way. I want to incorporate that into the story, and that feels almost I'm not sure how to handle that. That feels almost counterintuitive.
Yeah, I think the idea was supposed to be that the backstory reveals are like weapon attacks.
Oh, okay.
And so the idea is more like you whip out a piece of your backstory, maybe you make it up on the spot, and then everyone is supposed to roll with that. But it was just, maybe I didn't read the instructions well enough, but it was, yeah, I wouldn't do it that way again.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I definitely have sessions where I'm still sitting. It's like, and I think I've come up to some sessions where I've sat with, I'm not learning a lesson from that. The dice just hated me, or I'm not learning a session from that. My players just went way too unhinged, and it's a one shot. It's fine. We're just going to keep moving forward with something else. All right. So this next section is domain effects. In Daggerheart, everyone selects different cards as you level up. You've selected a handful of domain effects that represent the character that you're playing and your real life self. So we're just going to go through a speed round. Let me know what the domain effects is and why you picked it.
All right. So my cards, Uncanny Disguise. I mostly picked social stuff.
Sure.
Because I'm a lover, not a fighter. I know you know this. So I picked Uncanny Disguise. You have 3 minutes to prepare. Mark a stress to don the facade of any humanoid you can picture clearly in your mind. And this is good for me because I feel like I've been a chameleon my whole life. I can adopt the traits of the people I'm hanging out with very easily. Next is Tell No Lies. Make a spellcast roll against a target within very close range. On success, they can't tell a lie to you while they remain within close range, but they are not compelled to speak. I feel like this one is me and my son.
Sure.
He thinks he's a fantastic liar, but he's 10, and boy, he's bad. Every time I know, every time I know when he is full of it. Then level 3, I took Chokehold. When you position yourself behind a creature who's about your size, you can mark a stress to pull them in a chokehold, make them temporarily vulnerable. I don't think this has any parallel to my life. I just think that's a super, super cool ability. It's like you don't think of rogues as having a lot of support abilities, you know?
Yeah.
Rogues mostly get in, stabby, and then sneak off and let everyone else take the hits while they're hiding. But that is a really nice ability to do for a tag team or just to take a powerful enemy and make them vulnerable to give an advantage. Then through your eyes, choose a target with very far range. You can see through their eyes and hear through their ears. You can transition between using your own senses of the targets freely. I just think that sounds like a cool spell. Very far range is incredible.
Yeah.
Being able to snipe through somebody's eyes, just all of a sudden go into the inside of the tent, the commander's tent, while you're 289 feet away. Just sounds super cool.
Yeah. And then anything in your vault by chance?
Oh, Thought Delver. Oh, there is a card in my vault.
Yeah.
Thought Delver. Peeking on the minds of others, spend a hope to read the vague surface thoughts of a target within far range, make a spellcast roll. I feel like Thought Delver's pretty good for me because I'm pretty good with micro expressions. I can tell when people make those tiny little expressions that mean that they doubt or that they believe me or they doubt me or they're, I've always been pretty good at that. So I can't actually read minds, but micro expressions I'm pretty good with.
Yeah. Which in some ways can, especially with kids at least, that is basically reading their mind. So, all right.
Yeah.
Before we jump into the encounter, I will have you roll one final duality. You've rolled 2 with fear and 2 with hope. So which side does this tip over to?
That is a 2 on the hope and an 8 on the fear for a 10.
Ooh,
so
okay,
that's going to
10
be
with fear. We've talked about food already, but I do want to have the question here that I have for you is: have you ever had a meal experience that has gone terribly wrong?
A meal experience that has gone
Whether it's
terribly
you cooking
wrong.
or you eating it.
I got food poisoning at Casa Bonita.
No, this is the second episode in a row with someone having food poisoning. That's
Really?
horrible. Yes, the last one was the same exact thing. It was more food poisoning. And
that's my Thought Delver working. That's what that is.
Yeah, as someone, I said this last episode, as someone who really expects food to take care of us, when it tries to kill you, it's the absolute worst feeling.
Well, do you know about Casa Bonita in Denver?
Yeah, I've heard about it, and I've Tex-Mex-esque.
Yeah, it's a Tex-Mex restaurant. It's a famous Denver restaurant. There were some in a few other states, but it's been in Denver forever. And it was there was a South Park episode about it 20 years ago. It was a big deal. Cartman was very excited about going to Casa Bonita and became kind of world famous. It went under during the pandemic. Well, the South Park guys bought it in like 2021.
Okay.
Spent millions of dollars to renovate it, and it's opened again, and it's really good now. It's cool now. It's very South Park themed. The food's better. The food was terrible before, but the first time I went there 10 plus years ago during the old ownership, the food was always terrible, and it's super expensive because you're not paying to eat the food. You're paying for the Casa Bonita experience. Sure. There's like a 30-foot tall cliff where cliff divers jump into pools below. There's complete whole theaters in the restaurant with magic shows, and it's like an entertainment area. And I was there with a bunch of friends I had 3 friends who had birthdays within 3 days of each other. And so we had this like huge April 19th to 21st bash at Casa Bonita. I got sick right away and I had to stay there for hours because I didn't have a ride.
That's even worse.
This was before Uber. So I was just kind of stuck there.
That's horrible.
In the Casa Bonita bathroom while everybody else was having fun.
Yeah, I've had moments where I've woken up from food poisoning, and I've definitely had moments where I've eaten it and then like a couple hours later I feel bad, but feeling bad and then still being stuck at the place where you start feeling bad, I feel like that's even worse. Man.
Well, and then later on, I got my revenge because, like I said, I'm an author. Well, I was asked to contribute a story to an anthology by my friend Jay Thorne called American Demon Hunters. So I wrote a story about these demon hunters who battle demons inside Casa Bonita, and they destroy Casa Bonita in the process. And so that was my revenge.
That's so
if you
great.
know an author and you piss them off, they're going to put you in their book and kill them. I've killed many people who have crossed me.
Yeah, I have done the same thing as making people who've crossed me as adversaries in my TTRPG games. So I've done the same exact thing. I'm right there with you with putting my personal world or my real world into the fiction as adversaries.
Some people might say that's petty. I say it's therapeutic.
I am right there with you. All right. Jim, I do have one final question for you. Are you ready for this encounter?
No, but I'm going to do it anyway.
All right, let's jump into it.
Hope, fear, hope, fear, hope, fear, terror.
Jim, it is a lovely festival morning. The perfect time to pull off the heist. Or really the only time to pull off the heist, as is the only time the king and his crew will be walking through public in a crowded area before entering into the castle to enact his final decree and wage war on an enemy nation. As to avoid war, you have been tasked with stealing the king's decree, his speech that was pre-written for him, and to give to all his people. You find yourself just kind of walking along these streets, and you hear word from like a town crier that the king is on the way, and people are preparing, and some people are moving things on the streets, some people are kind of lining up, as some other individuals are just kind of taking notice of all the extra people and looking at vending extra food, flares to kind of light up for the king. I want to know, what are you doing and how do you approach this?
So I know that the king is going to have the speech on him or near him as he passes through.
The intel that you've gathered along this kind of journey and planning for this heist basically has said that the king will have his decree on him, and then in the backside of the carriage that he's riding on, the decree should be there.
Okay, so he's going to be in a carriage. Could I Blades in the Dark flashback style make a roll to see if I've set up some spotters on the rooftops?
Yeah, well, let's go for it. Let's say that would be, I think that would be either a knowledge or maybe even like an instinct roll to kind of affect the narrative and see where we go from there.
Okay, we'll go knowledge.
Yeah.
That is 7 on the fear, 4 on the hope. Crap, that's 12 with fear.
12 with fear. You remember kind of setting up a handful of spotters, but as you were kind of like planning and prepping this, one thing that you kind of took note is the vantage points at which you'll see the king have a kind of gap where the front half will be easily visible. The back half will, but there is a corner that will not be kind of covered. That might be something where you either need to fill in or you just have to take it as no line of sight, as you have 2 current spotters that you were able to recruit.
I think my plan is, I assume I'm probably like away from my party.
Yeah, we'll say that you're kind of intermixed within kind of like the crowd, just kind of blending in as a normal civilian.
Right, my party, they don't know where I am. They think I'm sleeping. But
Sure.
I got up early for this.
Sure.
They're all sleeping off last night's drunk, but I got up early. So
the rest of them are planning, all right, we're going to kill the king, because you know how D&D parties are. They'll come up with the one solution that you say, please don't do that. As they're planning and prepping to kill the king once he's on stage.
Okay, I have a 2-step plan. So I know that as the king nears the castle, there's a couple places where they're going to have to turn.
Sure.
Along the festival route. So step 1 is going to be, I need to put some kind of distraction in front of the carriage just to slow it down just for a moment. I just need it to, I don't need to break it. I don't want to cause a fight. I just need it to slow down for just a moment, because I'm going to hide in the alley in the shadow, and then if I can make the carriage stop for just a moment, then that'll be enough time for me to shadow step from my alley to underneath the carriage. And then actually, I guess there'll be a 3rd step to the plan, because at that point I'll need to cling on to the carriage and find some way to move from underneath the carriage to inside the carriage.
Sure.
Maybe that'll be a problem for future me to solve.
Yeah. So as present, you prepares a distraction. What does this distraction look like? What are you looking for? As it is, as the king at this point has kind of like just walked past like the first spotter at the front of the long curving road, and they've kind of just put up a signal for you to say the king is at the first checkpoint.
So ideally, I want to do this when he's near, when the caravan is near the market.
Okay.
Where there's anything, because I know those market stall support beams are pretty weak. And maybe if I topple one, I can spread a whole bunch of watermelons or some kind of melon out in front, just to cause the horse to step on a melon and get confused for a second.
Yeah. Let's say that this, I would think this would either be like a finesse for Tinker, or if you're just wanting to use your strength, that's totally up to you. You can push the the things that hold some of these stalls up with a strength roll. It's up to you, though.
I don't feel like I would do this. I would much more likely to try to get someone to do this for me.
Sure.
I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, let's say like we'll manifest it through maybe a presence roll, possibly.
Okay. So just find some guy on the street and walk up and take a handful of gold. Knock over that. Say, it's over for me. And then keep running. You never saw me. Handful of gold.
Yeah, go ahead and make that roll for me.
That is, oh man. That is 13. What did we say? Finesse?
Finesse. Or no, presence.
Yeah, presence. Oh, that is, then that is a 12 with fear. No, 14 with fear.
14 with fear. With that, as you kind of like the king continues kind of moving down and is about to like curve over the market, he looks at you and he kind of takes notice and says, "You want me to topple that in front of the..." And he like looks at the contraption that like that will possibly like block the way and slow the king down. He's like, "I'd go to jail for that." And he just kind of like walks away from you as the king kind of just moves around that corner past the market. You've kind of missed, and I will say with that, this is going to start the countdown of the king getting closer to the castle. The countdown currently is 4.
Oh no.
It'll tick every time you make an action roll before he makes it to the castle, but he's just past the market. You kind of know that there's 3 more winding corners before he makes it to the castle to pronounce the decree. But what do you do as this individual just kind of like walks away, not wanting to be jailed himself if he gets caught to?
Oh wow. Okay. So is the caravan past the watermelon point?
I would say that it would just have gotten past the watermelon point. Yeah, so there's definitely time for another distraction, but the first one definitely did not work.
All right. So what I'm going to do...
There's still 3 roads, or 3 kind of... There's still like 3 curves that you might still be able to kind of catch the king on. So one fail is not the entire fail. You still have time.
Okay. I want to make use of this guy, but I don't want to... that's nuclear mode. I'll save that. I have a plan to this guy, something with this guy, but... I think my first attempt is going to be to hide and then chuck a watermelon, an unseen watermelon near the caravan, just to get them to stop. I just need them to stop.
Yeah. Make me I'd say this as you're throwing something. Either a strength or agility, I think, would make the most sense for kind of throwing something forward.
All right. Cannot roll with hope to save my life. That is...
You also have experiences if there may be... if any of the experiences also apply.
No, it's a great roll. It's just with fear.
Okay.
That's 21 with fear.
Okay, 21 with fear. I will take that. As you do so, I'm gonna, as a reaction with that roll with fear, kind of gets thrown over, and you find that just kind of catching up to the king as the carriage stops is what it looks to be like the king's like head bodyguard on horseback, kind of like catching up to the carriage. And as the watermelon drops to the ground, you hear this kind of like a statement from the lieutenant and bodyguard that says, "Who threw that? Anyone who wishes to address the king in this way, step forward, lest your head be chopped off." And like kind of like looks around. I'm gonna have you mark a stress, but the carriage does successfully stop. You just now have a second adversary in opposition to you at the moment.
Okay, well, it's time to activate my nuclear plan anyway. This is where I was heading. So I'm going to take out that handful of gold that I was going to pay to the guy. And I'm going to throw it on the street, like spread it out.
Okay.
And I'm going to point at that guy. And I'm going to say, "He tried to hire me to throw a watermelon at the king. I said no, and he threw it anyway. He threw it."
Okay. I would say that this would be... Yeah, I would say that this would be a presence check, and I'm pretty sure you have Deft Deceiver, correct?
Deft Deceiver, no, to gain advantage on a roll. Yeah, we should do
Yeah,
that.
so go ahead and if you want to spend that hope, go ahead and make me a roll against the car. I would say that at this point, the countdown has stopped as you throw this gold, and like all sorts of denizens, regardless of whether the king's there or not, flood at least this small portion at the moment.
Exactly. That was my intention, was to try to just increase some confusion. All right, so that is a 1 on the D6, a 1 on the fear, and a 5 on the hopes. You said finesse? Or you said no.
I think this would be presence.
Presence is a +1, so that is 6, 7, 8 with hope.
Okay. He kind of looks at you, and the one that you are kind of pointing to, he is kind of at this point like started running off. The lieutenant kind of like signals off to like another set of guards, like, someone go chase after him. And at this point, like, the lieutenant jumps off of the horse and is trying to like disperse the rest of the crowds and kind of make his way towards you. And he's looking at you and trying to make his way towards you to kind of looks to be like wanting to ask further questions. And what are you doing at this point as he's making his way? There's a crowd between you and him.
I think I need to just go. He went that way. That
Sure.
way.
Sure. Are you going anywhere from that, or are you just kind of continuing to signal?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get this guy's attention off of me.
Sure. Yeah, I would say I feel like this would be another like presence deceiving roll as he's like kind of walking towards you.
Could I spend a hope to add it was like that when I got here?
I would say this would apply. Yeah.
This feels like a very relevant situation. Okay, so here we go. Presence, that is a 4 on a hope, 7 on the fear, 4 on the d6, 11, 15, 16 with fear.
16 with fear. At this point, the lieutenant has kind of like called and like whistled. I'll say that with that fear. He starts to disperse the crowd, but he walks up forward to you and says, "What did that guy want with the king?
He wanted to hit him with a watermelon.
What do you know of this? What do you know of him?" And he starts like kind of hounding you for like more information at the moment, as he's looking off in the distance, but actively like just trying to know more about this individual, as he kind of has this expectation that the rest of his guards are going to take care of the individual running off.
He told me that he and the king were schoolmates when they were young, and the king stole his galoshes once and never admitted that he stole his galoshes, so he was mad about his galoshes for all these years and wanted to get back at the king by throwing a watermelon at him. I thought he was crazy. I love the king. Who would do that? Who would do such a thing?
Yeah, I will say with that, he kind of turns over, and with that previous roll, he makes his way. It's like, thank you. And he kind of like starts walking away, and he's just kind of like looking for his guards now. He's not necessarily looking for the individual. He's still present, but he's looking in that direction, but he's not looking at you. What do you wish to do here at the moment? As I will say with that, the space has now kind of cleared, and the king will start moving soon.
Are there windows in the carriage?
I wouldn't say that there are windows. Yeah, there's a window at the moment, as the king's probably at this point kind of opened the curtain a little bit to see what exactly is going on, having been stopped.
Because I imagine there's probably a shadow inside there, and I could shadow step right inside there.
It's fairly dark on the inside. Yeah.
I'd be right there with the king, though, which I'm not sure if that gets me what I want.
You could look through his eyes if you wish. I think you have that option.
Oh, yeah. That's a good idea. Yeah, let's try that.
Yeah.
Do I have to spend...
I think it's just once per rest, I believe.
Yeah,
or it's like you can only select... Yeah, so...
I could do it until I cast a spell or until my next rest.
Yeah. I will say, as the cart does start to move, you kind of peer through the king's eyes, and you notice that he's currently holding the decree in his hand, and he's trying to like memorize the speech. And you notice that you hear him kind of muttering the words, and he's like incredibly nervous. Can you make me an instinct roll with that?
Instinct is... Ooh, finally. 14 with hope. No,
14
13 with hope. 14 with hope, yeah.
Okay, 14
So
with
that's
hope.
14.
With a 14 with
I
hope...
don't math so good, sorry.
You get the sense that there's like a lot of shakiness in his voice. There's a nervousness for a king having to read a decree, which for the most part you don't expect. I'll say with the 14 with hope, though, there is an aspect of how he does not quite want to share this news, but he's doing so regardless. Like there's a frailness in his voice, or there's fragility in his voice.
Does the countdown tick down even on rolls with hope?
I will say that the carriage has moved, and so any further countdown to stop the cart would continue. But that one, I would say that it had just started moving, so the countdown would not have increased yet. It's when it starts turning the corner is when I'm having the countdown tick.
Okay.
So you're currently at 3 on the countdown.
Okay. I think I'm just gonna have to go for it. Yeah, I'm going to shadow step into the carriage.
Okay.
And try to handle this socially, I think.
Okay.
If he's holding his hands, I'm not going to get it away from him. So yeah, I'm going to have to talk him out of giving the speech.
Yeah, you jump into the carriage as the king is incredibly surprised. I'll say with a fear, at the current moment, your first roll will be with disadvantage, as I'm going to spend a fear here as the king is startled. But before he screams out for help, what do you say?
I say, don't give the speech. It's exactly what they want.
Make me I would think this would be, I'll allow this to either be instinct or presence in this specific case, as you're kind of picking up from the previous conversation. And
All right, I'll roll presence.
feel
You
free
said
to
with
use
disadvantage.
any experiences if you think they apply.
This is kind of street smarts, I think,
Okay.
because I'm trying to scam him, basically. So you said with disadvantage before because I so suddenly appeared?
Yeah, so this will be with disadvantage as he's like freaked out from the fact that someone has just appeared in his cart, unbeknownst to him, all of a sudden.
Gotcha. So this will be with a disadvantage plus 4, 1 from my presence, and 3 from the street smarts.
Yep.
So, the disadvantage die is only a 1.
Okay.
That is a... so that's an 8, 7, 11, 11 with hope.
11 with hope is it's still a little shy. You still gain that hope. The king kind of like looks out and is like looking to reach for either the door or what looks to be like a dagger, as he has a hand on both. He's like, who are you? As he's kind of reaching out for the door. You have a moment. The countdown will tick, as I'll say that at this point, the carriage starts to curve around the other corner. There's still just one more corner before it's a straight shot to the castle as the countdown ticks to 2. But when he asks you, who are you? I need to give this speech.
Say, my lord, I am your last best hope. That speech has been laden with runes and glyphs from our neighboring enemies, and if you read it out loud to several people, you will activate the runes. Please do not give this speech today. You must have more study.
Yeah. I'm going to have a small flashback moment. I'll kind of give you liberty here. Can you describe to me how you came upon gaining that information? Like, where was it where you learned that the speech was laden about with that?
Oh, no, I'm completely making it up. This is all...
Okay, wonderful. Go ahead and make... I think this would then be a Deaf Deceiver's roll if you want to spend the hope to gain advantage on this.
Yeah.
Go for it. This would be another presence roll. Lots of presence.
This feels like I'm just running out of options, because I'm probably not... I'm not going to kill the king and steal his speech, and I probably can't do that anyway. I wouldn't make it out of here alive with all the guards. It's only going to be probably a couple more rolls for the guards to figure out I'm in here. Okay, so sorry. Tell me again what I'm rolling.
Just a presence roll, and then if you want to spend a hope, you can add Deaf Deceivers to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I have 2 hope left, so I will go ahead and spend one of those. Deaf Deceiver is advantage. All right, so that is a 6 on the advantage die, 2 on the hope die, 5 on the fear die. So that's 8, 13 plus presence is a 14. Yeah, 14 with fear. Boo.
14 with fear. With that, I will say that the king kind of is going to like hear you out. The countdown will still tick as the carriage does continue to move, but he kind of takes notice of the runes, like, and he's like now looking at it worried, but he has stopped reaching for the door. I will say with this, you have one final roll to convince the king further to no longer share the decree before it makes its way to the castle, and you are now behind the castle walls, which will likely be the most guarded state. So this roll would be to gain the favor of the king, but I do want to ask, what are you saying to your king?
I will say to my king, my liege, do not read the speech. You must await word from the Moon Maiden. The Moon Maiden will deliver the message later tonight, the one from your dreams. You know of which I speak.
And if you have the hope, I will say you can use Deaf Deceiver. And I think
hope.
Maybe your experience, like travel guide, may apply too. So if you want to spend 2 hope,
I'm out of hope.
Okay, go ahead and make that roll then.
Oh no. That's an 11 on the fear, 1 on the hope, and a 4 on the d6. So that's 12, 16, 17 with fear.
17 with fear. The king, you feel the cart come to a stop, as you can only imagine that this is behind the walls of the keep. And as it stops, the door opens and the king looks at you as you look to this, like, what looks to be this separate guard that like opens the door and notices there's two. Immediately, like, there's this instinct to just kind of grab a hold of you and like pull you out. As the king kind of like walks out slowly, you're kind of at this point you're restrained and kind of dragged out of the carriage. They hold you. The king kind of takes note of the writing on his decree once more and looks down at you and says, "We'll continue with the festivities, but I have more questions." And he looks to his guards as they ask, "What do you want to do with him?" "Throw him in the dungeon, as I'm very conflicted and confused right now, and I'm going to spend that last sphere," and they're going to just start taking you. You see at this point, there's like a handful of like 10 plus guards that are escorting what looks to be this one individual who somehow got in the carriage, and the king has just given the instructions to throw you in the dungeon for the moment. Which, Jim, that brings us to the end of that encounter. To figure out what happens to your character, having successfully convinced the king to at least stop and question what the rest of your party does, as they kind of like sit, we'll kind of like zoom out. The rest of your party is ready, prepared to kill the king, and the king never shows as he's asking you questions. So you have saved the day, or at least postponed it till the evening. But with that, Jim, that's the end of this episode of Duality. Thank you for coming on the show. As I have with every other guest, and as we did at the beginning, Jim, where can we find you on the interwebs?
You can find my fiction at jimheskett.com, JimHeskett.com. Also on Amazon, just search for Jim Heskett. I'm not the Harvard Law professor James L. Heskett. That's a different human being. I'm Jim Heskett. You can find me on YouTube with TTRPG stuff at WizardSling. Wizards and Wordslingers is my YouTube channel. I also am a part of the Landlock Warlocks YouTube channel. That's me, Brad Wolf, and Ryan Doyle, a couple other YouTubers. And we do a weekly live stream on Friday where we talk about all the news and stuff.
So all those links will be down below in the descriptions. Go up on those links, join, and learn more about WizardSling and everything that's going on from Daggerheart on that side of the Dimensional Rift. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode of Duality, everyone. Bye.
From ink and steel, stories are forged. We are BladeBound Saga.